Concept cars are a way for car manufacturers to flex the muscles of their imaginations. This might happen almost entirely in secret, or as a way of promoting the brand at an international motor show, or something in between. Concepts of one kind or another have been around since at least the 1930s. Many remain in the public memory for years, but most are quickly forgotten as soon as a new batch turns up. From many hundreds of possibilities, here are 44 of the perhaps less well-remembered concepts in automotive history, listed in chronological order. Aston Martin Atom, 1940. The Atom was a small and dramatically styled sedan initially fitted with a 2.0-liter overhead cam engine, though this was replaced by a very slightly larger capacity pushrod unit in 1944. David Brown, 1904 to 1993, drove it shortly before deciding to buy the company. So he must have been impressed, but there was never to be a production version. Chrysler Falcon, 1955. Designed primarily by Virgil Exner, 1909 to 1973, and built by Ghia, the Falcon was a racy two-seat roadster powered by a 4.5-liter version of the Chrysler Hemi V8 engine. Revealed 2 years after the original Chevrolet Corvette. And around the same time as the first-generation Ford Thunderbird, it might have been a competitor for both, but Chrysler decided not to go ahead with it. Alfa Romeo Carrebo, 1968. Marcello Gandini, born 1938, must have been looking the future square in the face when he designed the low wedge shape and scissor doors for the mid-engine Carrebo. Alfa Romeo did not allow it to go beyond the concept stage. And it's possible that the world just wasn't ready for something like this in the 1960s. However, the Carrebo bears a strong resemblance to another car designed by Gandini. This was the Lamborghini Countach which, unlike the earlier concept, went on sale in 1974. Mazda RX 500, 1970. At first glance, the RX 500 seemed like it had been designed for the same reasons as the Alfa Romeo Carrebo. It had a wedge shape, though not quite as extreme as the Carrebo's, a mid-mounted engine, in this case a twin-rotor. Butterfly swing doors and gull-wing engine covers. All of this screamed supercar, but in fact the RX 500 was intended as a showcase for Mazda's research into safety. Among other things, it had a row of lights at the rear to indicate to following traffic whether the car was accelerating, maintaining speed or closing down. Nissan 126X, 1970. Yet another wedge-shaped concept from 1970, there was a lot of that sort of thing going on at the time. The 126X had the same changing rear light feature also found on the Mazda RX 500. Its shape was slightly less supercar-like, though in some ways even odder than those of either the Mazda or the Alfa Carrebo. In one respect Nissan went a step ahead of the other manufacturers mentioned. Access to the interior was via a canopy which hinged from the front and consisted of the roof, windshield and front body panels. Ford Cirrus, 1972. Mechanically, the Cirrus Fastback was simply a Ford Escort RS 1600, the Cosworth BDA-powered hot version of the first-generation small sedan. It didn't look like one because its design was based on the winning entry in a car design competition organized by the Institute of British Carriage and Automobile Manufacturers and promoted by the Daily Telegraph newspaper. It later transpired that the successful entrant was a professional designer who worked for Chrysler. Volvo VSC, 1972. Volvo was already famous for its insistence on car safety when it unveiled the VSC at the 1972 Geneva Motor Show. It was full of equipment which was unusual at the time but very common now, including many airbags, automatically deploying headrests, anti-lock brakes, automatic fuel supply cut-off, an integrated roll cage, acoustic reversing warning and a steering wheel which was pulled forward in a frontal impact. The overall styling reappeared in slightly toned-down form in the Volvo 200 series, which went on sale in 1974. Alfa Romeo New York Taxi, 1976. Italdesign's response to a challenge laid down by the New York Museum of Modern Art was only 4 meters, 157 inches, long, but it could seat 5 people and had space under the seats to fit folded wheelchairs. To add to the practicality, there were sliding doors on both sides, a very unusual feature for 1976. The project stopped after the vehicle was built, which is why you don't associate Alfa Romeo with New York cabs today. Shame, as it's an intriguing concept. AMC AM Van, 1977. Styled to look like the AMC Pacer, this van was one of 7 vehicles created for the Concept 80 Tour created by AMC to showcase its ideas about future small, fuel-efficient products. It was said to have 4-wheel drive, and the word turbo appeared on both sides. But it was in fact a non-functioning model. It found a new owner in summer 2022. Pontiac Firebird Trans Am Type K, 1977. Creating an wagon version of the second-generation Firebird was an idea which gained a surprising amount of traction within General Motors. 2 concepts were built, and the one shown here was later updated to reflect a facelift of the standard model in 1979. Features included gullwing doors allowing access not to the cabin but to the luggage compartment. Thoughts of production were dashed for several reasons, not least the fact that the car would have been spectacularly expensive to manufacture. Lancia Megagamma, 1978. Italdesign returned to the one-box body shape of the Alfa Romeo New York taxi when it devised the Megagamma 2 years later. Lancia felt that the Megagamma would not appeal to enough buyers, but this might have been a misstep. The Renault E-Space, designed on similar principles and released 6 years after the Megagamma project was cancelled, proved to be a big success. Lancia Cibolo, 1978. The only connections between the Megagamma and the Cibolio are that they both appeared at the 1978 Turin Motor Show and both wore Lancia badges. Otherwise, they were as different as chalk and china. The Bertone-designed Cibolo was essentially a longer and even more outlandish-looking version of the Stratos. Both the concept and the production car were powered by a 2.4-liter Ferrari V6 engine. Chrysler ETV-1, 1979. ETV stands for Electric Test Vehicle, which is exactly what this concept was, a way for Chrysler to try out its electrical drive systems on a working car. In contrast to the current situation, public enthusiasm for electric vehicles was minimal in 1979. So the ETV-1 never made it past the development stage. Lancia Medusa, 1980. The Medusa was a derivative of the mid-engined Lancia Monte Carlo with a supremely aerodynamic body designed by Giorgetto Giugiaro, born 1938. It might have become the DeLorean DMC-24 sedan, but that idea evaporated when the DeLorean company collapsed. Instead, the design became the inspiration for another concept car, the Lamborghini Marco Polo of 1982. Audi Sport Quattro RS002, 1986. The RS002 was never intended to be only a concept, using the same mechanicals found in the Quattro rally cars. This mid-engined coupe was one of several cars built for the Group S International Motorsport regulations which were due to replace Group B in 1987. A series of terrible crashes led to the abandonment of Group S in favor of the more production-based Group A. The RS002 could not have been built in large enough numbers to qualify, so the project was cancelled before the car took part in a single event. BMW E1, 1991. The original E1 was an early modern attempt to develop an electric car from scratch rather than adapting an existing model, as BMW had done with the 1602 Electroantriebe 19 years before. It was well received by reviewers, and was followed up by another attempt in 1993. As interesting as all this was, it did not immediately lead to a production model. The all-electric BMW i3 would not reach dealerships until 2013. Mercedes F100, 1991. Stranger looking even than the later Renault Avantime, the F100 would probably never have found more than a handful of buyers, but that wasn't the point. The point was that it introduced technology which Mercedes would use in passenger cars over the following decade, such as gas discharge headlights, voice recognition, electronic tire pressure monitoring and a chip card instead of conventional car keys. The F100 was also planned to be capable of warning the driver about imminent hazards, and had 2 square meters of solar panels on the roof, generating up to 100 W of electricity. Renault Reinastella, 1992. Displayed at Disneyland Paris, the Reinastella, named after a real Renault produced briefly around 1930, was a completely fictional machine said to be part of the company's lineup in the 23-28 model year. Choosing the appropriate tense becomes difficult here. So we'll pretend we're speaking from the mid-24th century and report that the Reinastella could fly 15 centimeters, 6 inches, above the road in town and 150 meters, 492 feet, above it in the country and had a maximum speed of 186 miles per hour. During desert testing, a prototype crashed and seems to have absorbed the bodies of its 2 occupants. For production versions, Renault used a modified structure which was incompatible with mammals. Fiat Downtown, 1993. The Downtown was a tiny electric car with an overall length of just 3 meters, 118 inches, but enough space for 3 occupants, a driver up front and 2 passengers in the rear. For a car with a claimed top speed of 62 miles per hour, the Downtown looks alarmingly top-heavy. But its center of gravity was probably quite low. The batteries were mounted between the rear wheels, and the aluminum chassis was covered by plastic body panels. Buick XP 2000, 1995. Although it was badged as a Buick and displayed at 3 large U.S. auto shows, the XP 2000 was in fact developed a world away GM's Australian brand, Holden. Based on the V platform, itself originally the work of Opel in Germany. The XP 2000 showed a lot of promise as a future production car, but GM decided not to go ahead with it. Mitsubishi Gauss, 1995. The Gauss was an SUV concept whose side doors were divided in 2. The top half retracted upwards, while the lower half folded down for use as a step. No production version was developed, but if it had been, its doors would almost certainly have been more conventional. Renault 50, 1996. The 50 commemorated the half-century since the public launch of Renault's first post-war car, the 4CV, which it somewhat resembled, thought that car did not in fact go on sale until 1947. Resemblances between the two went no further than a similar shape and some small design details. Very much unlike the 4CV, the 50 was based on the aluminum frame created for the Renault Sport Spyder, and had carbon fiber bodywork. Chrysler Phaeton, 1997. Like the Renault 50, the Phaeton was a tribute to its maker's past. It looked like a modern interpretation of several previous Chryslers, though perhaps most obviously the Newport Phaeton. One example of which was used as the pace car for the 1941 Indianapolis 500 race. The Phaeton ran on 22-inch wheels and was powered by a 5.4-liter V12 engine, reputed to be 2 versions of Chrysler's 2.7-liter V6 joined together. Bugatti 18-thirds Chiron, 1999. The 18-thirds Chiron dates from the early days of Bugatti's ownership by Volkswagen. 3 concepts were produced at around the same time. And they were all powered by a 6.3-liter 555 brake horsepower engine which had 18 cylinders arranged in 3 banks, hence the 18-thirds part of the car's name. The rest of it refers to Monégasque driver Louis Chiron, 1899 to 1979. Who competed in several makes of car but is perhaps best known for his exploits in Bugattis. The Chiron name was placed on Bugatti's hypercar that launched in 2016. Audi Rosemeyer, 2000. Another famous racing driver commemorated in a concept car was Bernd Rosemeyer, 1909 to 1938, whose name was used for a fabulous Audi built at the turn of the 21st century. All of Rosemeyer's success came at the wheel of the ferocious mid-engined Auto Union single-seaters. The concept closely resembled those, despite being a two-door coupe. And its engine had the same number of cylinders, 16, though in this case they were arranged in a W rather than a V formation. Rosemeyer himself was killed in a land speed record attempt on the A5 Autobahn near Frankfurt in January 1938. Dodge Razor, 2002. Developed by Daimler Chrysler in association with scooter manufacturer Razor, this concept was a minimalist sports car powered by a turbocharged 2.4-liter four-cylinder engine producing around 250 horsepower. It might have served as an interesting rival to the Mazda MX-5 if it had ever gone into production, but that didn't happen. Mitsubishi Seiro, 2003. The Seiro, also referred to as SERO, was the second of two concepts which led to the development of a production K car. As such, it was less than 3.5 meters, 138 inches, long and had a 660 cubic centimeters engine. Its polished aluminum bodywork, deliberately styled to make the car look like an airship, gave no clue about what the production car would look like. This was the Mitsubishi I, whose electric equivalent was sold as the IMI EV and, with different badging, as the Citroën C0 and the Peugeot i0N. Toyota CSNS, 2003. The CSNS was one of 6 Toyota concepts displayed at the 37th Tokyo Motor Show in late 2003. It had broadly the same hybrid power system as the contemporary Prius, with an electric motor powering the front wheels and the 1.5-liter gasoline engine driving the rears. The CSNS was also notable in having a multifunction touchscreen, a far more futuristic idea back in 2003 than it is now. Volvo YCC, 2003. The YCC, standing for Your Concept Car, was described by Volvo as being designed by women for modern people, a phrase which sounds very old-fashioned only 2 decades later. The all-female design team was determined to make the car as user-friendly as possible. With good visibility, a practical interior and several personalization options. In one notably simple but ingenious example, the designers made it possible to fill up the windshield washer bottle from the side of the body. Since they saw no reason why anyone should have to open the hood just to do that. Holden Effigy, 2005. The Effigy's name is both a pun on the word effigy and a reference to the 1950s Holden FJ. There are some visual similarities between the production car and the retro rod concept, but the Effigy was much more aggressive and a great deal faster. It was based on a lengthened Chevrolet Corvette platform and powered by a supercharged 6.0-liter V8 engine producing around 640 brake horsepower, approximately the output of 10 FJs. Ford Reflex, 2006. Ford described the Reflex as proof that small cars can be bold, American, and innovative. The innovation included finding space for 3 seats in a concept that looked like it could manage only 2 and powering it with a diesel-electric hybrid powertrain. Other highlights included polished 20-inch alloy wheels, low roll-resistance Michelin tires, a 6-speed semi-automatic transmission with shift paddles and solar-powered exterior lights. Saab Aero X, 2006. According to Saab, the Aero X was inspired partly by the company's history in aircraft design. This was expressed partly in a cockpit canopy which had to be lifted up to let the occupants in and out. A possibly problematic situation if you were unfortunate enough to land rubber side up. A twin-turbo engine fueled by bioethanol was claimed to produce 400 brake horsepower, and the styling details hinted at a future design language. Sadly, not much came of this. Because Saab lasted less than a decade after the Aero X made its appearance. Dodge Zeo, 2008. Created when electric cars were just starting to look as if they might be part of the motoring future, the Zero was a low-slung 4-seater whose motor was claimed to be capable of providing a top speed of 130 miles per hour and a 0 to 60 miles per hour time of 5.7 seconds. Dodge also said it had a range of 250 miles between charges, though of course this wouldn't be possible at three-figure speeds. Tanghua Book of Songs, 2008. The three Tanghua electric concepts displayed at the 2008 Detroit show all had a friendly look which were supposed to be indicative of Chinese culture. The Book of Songs, perhaps the best named of the trio, was also the most cartoon-like. But the piece of cloud and the amphibious Detroit fish ran it close. They were all claimed to be suitable for tourist areas, large communities, university campuses and small towns, but the project doesn't seem to have got much further. Mercedes ESF 2009 Experimental Safety Vehicle, 2009. Like the F100 mentioned earlier, the ESF 2009, based on the contemporary S-Class, brought to public attention safety aids which would appear on production models in the near future. Among these were seatbelt airbags, pre-safe collision avoidance, interactive vehicle communication and a night vision system. Volkswagen Concept Blue Sport, 2009. This two-seat roadster had a lightweight chassis with a mid-mounted 2.0-liter diesel engine said to be capable of 65 miles per gallon on the then-current combined fuel economy cycle. Apart from the diesel bit, it was similar to the Toyota MR2 and to some extent the Renault Sport Spider and Lotus Elise, all of which were available to the public, but VW made it clear right from the start that this was a design study with no immediate plans for production, and apparently no future plans either. Citroën Metropolis, 2010. Longer than an Audi A8L and as wide as a Maybach, the Metropolis was a very large sedan, a type of car particularly popular in China. Power came from a gasoline-electric hybrid drivetrain which included an electric motor and a 2.0-liter V6 engine. This was said to be as muscular as a non-hybrid 4.0-liter V8 but producing 1/5 of the CO2 emissions. The Metropolis was never put on sale, but the similar DS9 entered the Chinese market in 2020. GMC Granite, 2010. GMC is best known for its large trucks and SUVs, and rarely builds concept vehicles. It was therefore a surprise when the little Granite, powered by a 1.4-liter turbo gasoline engine, was unveiled at the 2010 Detroit show. Rumors of a production version persisted for several years, but when GMC representative Mark Alger was asked in 2019 if the brand might put a similar small crossover on the market, he replied, "I'm going to give you a definite no on that one. Nothing has happened since to suggest that the policy has changed." Kia Pop, 2010. The Pop was a radical electric city car with 3 seats, the one at the rear mounted at an angle to provide the maximum possible legroom in a vehicle measuring just 3 meters from end to end. Kia didn't pretend that this was a car of the current generation, or indeed the one after that, but looks even further into the future. Chevrolet Mirai, 2011. First displayed at the Seoul Motor Show, the Mirai did not look like a sporty Chevrolet model of the past, but it did have enough styling cues to make the point. Its powertrain was absolutely modern, consisting of a 1.5-liter gasoline engine and 2 electric motors. According to GM, the Mirai offers an exploration of future possibilities for the brand, a coded phrase meaning, "We won't be building it anytime soon." Citroën Tubic, 2011. Few concepts built by Citroën, or indeed anyone else, have been quite as odd as the Tubic. It was an MPV with 9 seats and a design which made it look like a vastly extended, and very rounded, update of Citroën's famous H-type van. In 2017, the Tubic was one of 65 vehicles put up for auction at the Conservatoire Citroën collection on the outskirts of Paris, and found a buyer. Saab Phoenix, 2011. Saab's final concept, revealed shortly after the company was sold to Spyker and named after a mythical bird which rose from the ashes of its predecessor, was based on a new platform intended for the next production 9-3 and had a 1.6-liter turbo gasoline engine up front and an electric motor driving the rear wheels. According to a statement issued at the time of the Geneva show, the future is already here, but Saab didn't have a future. And this time the Ashes won. Chevrolet Code 130R, 2012. The Code 130R was a proposal for a small, rear-wheel drive Chevrolet powered by a 1.4-liter turbo gasoline producing something in the region of 150 brake horsepower. It was well received, and there was strong support for a production version. This never came about for several reasons, one of the most important reportedly being that GM would have had to develop a new platform to base it on. Kia Provo, 2013. Looking every centimeter a road-legal racer, according to Kia, the Provo was a sporty coupe/hatchback crossover with a proven 1.6-liter turbo gasoline engine under the hood and an electric motor supplying further power to the rear wheels. It would probably have been pretty quick, and it certainly had an arresting appearance, but there were concerns about selling a car of that name in Northern Ireland, for reasons we need not discuss here. The point was moot, though, since the Provo never made it to production.